Drone footage showed them cheating against my construction trailer at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I rewound the clip, watched my wife Darla arch her back against the rusted metal siding while my brother Troy grabbed her hips. The timestamp burned in the corner. October 15th. The same day I'd told her I loved her over breakfast. I didn't throw anything, didn't scream. Just saved the file to an encrypted drive and poured another cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The Penobscot Bay Harbor project had been my baby for 18 months. Structural marine engineering was precise work. One miscalculation and a pier collapsed, taking boats and bodies with it. I'd deployed surveillance drones to map underwater foundations, document progress, ensure contractor compliance. I never expected to document my marriage ending. The depot office smelled like diesel and wet concrete. Rain hammered the corrugated roof as I scrolled through more footage. There. October 8th, September 30th, August 19th. A pattern emerging like cracks in bad concrete. My phone buzzed. Darla said, "Working late again?" "Kids are asking when Daddy's coming home." "Soon," I typed back, just reviewing footage. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. She was typing something long, deleting it, starting over. Finally, she typed, "Don't work too hard. Love you." I thought, love you. I pulled up Darla's car's GPS logs from our insurance app. She'd claimed grocery runs on those dates, but the coordinates showed a different story. The Seaside Motor Inn. 17 visits in 3 months. The rain outside had turned to sleet. I called Sophia Tran, my college friend who'd become one of Portland's most vicious divorce attorneys. "Nolan, it's almost midnight," she said. "I need to hire you," I said. Silence. Then, "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring everything." I hung up and watched the footage again. This time I noticed details. Troy wearing my watch, Darla in a dress I'd never seen, both of them laughing at something on his phone. They looked happy. I drove home through empty streets, past lobster boats bobbing in the harbor like sleeping seals. Our house sat on a bluff overlooking Casco Bay, a weathered Victorian I'd renovated myself. Every beam calculated, every joint engineered to last. The kitchen light was on. Darla stood at the counter in her robe, hair still perfect despite the late hour. "You're soaked," she said, moving toward me with a towel. "I'm fine." I stepped past her, noting the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine. "Kids asleep?" "Hours ago. Maddie finished her math homework. Felix lost another tooth." She smiled, playing the perfect wife. "There's leftover pot roast in the fridge." I nodded and headed upstairs. In our bedroom, I found her phone charging on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a text preview. "Troy, can't wait to taste you again." She'd forgotten to delete it. I lay awake until dawn, listening to Darla breathe beside me, planning my first move. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The private investigator's name was Marcus Webb, a former Maine State Police detective who specialized in infidelity cases. His office in Portland's Old Port District reeked of cigarettes and cheap cologne. "Cheating spouse?" Webb asked, not looking up from my retainer check. "Among other things," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "What other things?" he asked. I slid the USB drive across his desk. "My brother's been using my business name to acquire construction materials," I said. "I need to know where they're going." Webb plugged in the drive, watched the drone footage without comment. His expression never changed, even when Darla moaned loud enough for the audio to catch it. "Quality equipment," he said finally. "What's your timeline?" 2 weeks, I said. "I want everything: digital forensics, financial records, surveillance photos, admissible in court." "This isn't about revenge, is it?" Webb asked, studying my face. "This is about winning." "There's a difference?" I said. Webb smiled for the first time. "Yeah, revenge feels good. Winning pays the bills." I left his office and drove to Sophia's firm in downtown Portland. Her corner office overlooked the harbor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the very piers I'd helped engineer. "Jesus, Nolan," Sophia said, setting down the footage after 5 minutes. "How long has this been going on?" 3 months minimum, I said. "Maybe longer." She leaned back in her leather chair, fingers steepled. Sophia had been beautiful in college, half Vietnamese, half Irish, with sharp cheekbones and sharper instincts. Now at 36, she was stunning in the way successful women became when they stopped caring what men thought. "Darla filed for divorce 2 days ago," she said quietly. The words hit like ice water. "What?" I said. "Her attorney is Wes Harrow," she said. "Bottom feeder who specializes in screwing over husbands. He's already filed motions for emergency custody and spousal support. She slid papers across the desk. Claims you're emotionally abusive, neglectful, possibly dangerous. I read the affidavit in silence. According to Darla, I was a cold, calculating sociopath who ignored my children and threatened her when she tried to leave. She claimed I'd installed tracking devices on her car, monitored her communications, and made veiled threats about making her disappear. None of it was true. Yet. There's something else, Sophia continued. Wes Harrow used to represent my ex-husband. He fabricated evidence in that case too, cost me $50,000 in legal fees to prove it. So this is personal for you, I said. Everything's personal, Nolan, she said. The question is whether you want to play defense or offense. I thought about Darla's smile that morning, how she'd kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted eggs, how she'd probably called Troy the moment I left for work. Offense, I said. Sophia's smile could have cut glass. Good, because I have some ideas. The first trap was simple. I invited everyone to dinner, Darla, Troy, and our mother, Irene. A family reconciliation, I called it. Time to air out our problems like civilized adults. Irene arrived first, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the October wind. At 68, she still carried herself like the beauty queen she'd been in 1975. She'd always preferred Troy, the charming one, the one who called every Sunday and sent flowers on Mother's Day. Nolan, sweetheart. She kissed my cheek, leaving lipstick marks. I'm so glad you called. This foolishness between you and Darla has gone on long enough. Troy showed up 20 minutes late, because of course he did. My younger brother had inherited Dad's charm and Mom's selfishness, a combination that made him irresistible to women and impossible to trust. He wore an expensive leather jacket I knew he couldn't afford and my vintage Rolex Submariner. Brother, he clapped my shoulder like we were old friends. Good to see you. Darla emerged from the kitchen wearing a black dress that hugged every curve. She'd spent an hour on her makeup, I could tell. For me or for Troy? I made your favorite, she said, setting down a platter of lobster rolls. Remember our first date at Holy Donut? You said you'd never tasted anything so perfect. I remembered. I also remembered Webb's photos from earlier that week. Darla on her knees in Troy's truck behind Shaw's supermarket. We ate in tense silence, making small talk about the weather and Maddie's soccer games. Irene dominated the conversation as usual, praising Troy's new consulting business while pointedly ignoring my harbor project. Troy's always been the entrepreneur, Irene said, patting his hand. Not everyone's cut out for sitting behind a desk all day. Speaking of Troy's business, I said, pulling out my tablet, I've been reviewing some invoices. Troy's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What invoices? He asked. I showed him the screen. Purchase orders for concrete, rebar, and marine-grade lumber, all bearing my company's letterhead and signature. These orders, I said, for materials I never authorized. There must be some mistake, Troy said. No mistake, I replied. I've traced the deliveries. Hancock Wharf, where you've been building that private dock, using materials I paid for, sold to clients who think they're getting legitimate work. The color drained from Troy's face. Darla looked confused, but Irene immediately went on the attack. How dare you accuse your own brother of… she began. I'm not accusing, I said calmly. I'm documenting. I touched the tablet screen. The living room TV flickered to life, showing web surveillance footage. Not the construction site video, something more recent. Troy's pickup truck parked outside the Seaside Motor Inn. Darla climbing out of the passenger seat, hair mussed, lipstick smudged. Irene gasped. Darla went white. The video continued. Troy getting out, stretching, completely shirtless. My watch catching the afternoon light on his wrist. Hell of a watch, I said, taking a sip of wine. Dad gave me that for my graduation. Said it was for the son who'd amount to something. Troy was on his feet, face flushed. Nolan, let me explain, he said. Explain what? I said. That you've been screwing my wife, or that you've been stealing from my business? I set down my wine glass with surgical precision. Because Webb's investigation covered both. Darla finally found her voice. You hired a private investigator? She asked. I hired several, I said. The forensic accountant was particularly thorough. Did you know Troy owes the Patriarcha family $47,000 from poker games in Boston? Wes Harrow's old stomping grounds. Troy lunged across the table, but I was ready. I caught his wrist, twisted it until he dropped to his knees. The Rolex came free in my hand. This belongs to me, I said, fastening it around my wrist, just like everything else you've taken. Irene was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. How could you do this to your family? She asked. I didn't do anything, Mom, I said. I just documented what was already happening. I looked at Darla, who sat frozen in her chair like a deer in headlights. By the way, Sophia filed our response to your divorce petition this afternoon. Full custody, division of assets based on infidelity, and criminal charges for the embezzlement. Wes should have copies by now. Darla's phone buzzed. She stared at the screen, reading Wes's text, her face crumbling with each word. You set us up, she whispered. No, I said, standing to clear the dishes. I just stopped playing defense. The Cumberland County Family Court smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat beside Sophia at the plaintiff's table, watching Wes Harrow pace like a caged animal. Wes was everything I'd expected. Expensive suit, cheap cologne, and the moral flexibility of a politician. He'd made his reputation destroying husbands in divorce court, turning cheating wives into sufferers and breadwinners into villains. Your Honor, Wes began, addressing Judge Patricia Cohen, my client has endured months of psychological misuse at the hands of a man who monitors her every movement, invades her privacy, and uses his technical expertise to terrorize her. He painted me as a controlling monster, citing the GPS tracking, the surveillance, the calculated humiliation at dinner. Darla took the stand, tears flowing on cue, describing a marriage built on fear and emotional manipulation. He never touches the children, she sobbed. Never shows them affection. They're afraid of him, Your Honor, afraid of their own father. It was a masterful performance. I almost believed it myself. Then Sophia stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that Mrs. Briggs has committed perjury. She approached the witness stand with a tablet, showing Darla the screen. Do you recognize this video, Mrs. Briggs? It was Webb's footage from the motel, but enhanced, stabilized with professional audio cleaning. Darla and Troy, post-coital, sharing a cigarette and laughing about something on his phone. Turn up the volume, Sophia instructed the court clerk. Troy's voice filled the courtroom. He's probably at home right now, building some spreadsheet about dock maintenance. Does he actually think you married him for love? Darla's recorded laughter was like broken glass. God, no. I married him because he was stable. Boring, but stable. I never thought I'd have to pretend to love him forever. The judge's expression hardened. Wes objected frantically, but the damage was done. Mrs. Briggs, Judge Cohen said coldly, you've just testified that your husband never shows affection to your children. Yet this recording suggests you view your marriage as a financial arrangement. Which statement is true? Darla stammered, trying to explain, but Sophia wasn't finished. Your Honor, I have additional evidence regarding the paternity of the couple's youngest child. The courtroom went silent. Even Wes stopped pacing. Sophia produced a manila envelope, breaking the seal with theatrical precision. DNA test results, conducted by LabCorp at my client's request. Felix Briggs is not the biological son of Nolan Briggs. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt nothing. I'd known since the blood type discrepancies appeared on Felix's school physical. But watching Darla's face collapse was almost worth the betrayal. The biological father, Sophia continued, is Troy Briggs, the defendant's brother, confirmed by DNA evidence obtained during Mr. Troy Briggs's recent arrest. Wes was on his feet. Objection, he said sharply. This is highly prejudicial. Overruled, Judge Cohen said. His voice could have frozen the harbor. Mrs. Briggs, Judge Cohen continued, did you know Felix was not your husband's biological child? Darla couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming. And did you allow your husband to support this child financially? Sophia pressed. While conducting an affair with the biological father? Another nod. Judge Cohen made her ruling that afternoon. I got temporary full custody. All marital assets, frozen pending criminal investigation, and a restraining order barring both Darla and Troy from contact with me or Maddie. Felix would remain with me despite the paternity results. A man who raises a child is that child's father, the judge said. Biology doesn't erase love. If only she knew how little love remained. Outside the courthouse, Sophia lit a cigarette, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. That was beautiful work, I said. We're not done yet, she replied. She exhaled smoke into the October wind. Wes will appeal, claim prosecutorial misconduct, whatever he can think of. We need to finish this. What did you have in mind? I asked. Sophia smiled, and I remembered why I'd always been a little afraid of her. We take everything that matters to them, she said. Their freedom, their reputation, their future. Everything. Even Troy? I asked. Especially Troy, she said. I looked back at the courthouse steps where Darla sat crying into her phone. Probably calling Troy, looking for comfort that would never come. He's my brother, I said. No, Sophia replied. He was your brother. Now he's just another target. Webb's investigation into Troy's consulting business revealed layers of criminality I hadn't anticipated. The warehouse on Hancock Wharf wasn't just storing stolen construction materials. It was a distribution hub for smuggled electronics from cargo ships anchored outside territorial waters. Your brother's in deep, Webb explained, spreading photos across my kitchen table. The Patriarcha family runs numbers from Boston to Bangor. Troy owes them 50 grand, but he's been paying it off by providing warehouse space and legitimate business covers for their shipments. The photos showed Troy meeting with known associates of the crime family. Frank Torino, Mickey Sachs, men with federal records and reputations for violence. One picture caught Troy handing over keys to my construction equipment. He's been using your dozers and cranes to move containers, Webb continued. Coast Guard's been tracking unusual vessel activity, but they need specific intelligence to move. I stared at the photos, processing the implications. You're suggesting I turn in my own brother? I asked. I'm suggesting you protect yourself, Webb said. When this goes down, and it will go down, you don't want your business tied to it. Webb was right. Troy had used my company's reputation and equipment to facilitate federal crimes. When the investigation concluded, my business would be scrutinized, my contracts reviewed, my permits potentially revoked, unless I acted first. I called the Coast Guard's Criminal Investigation Unit that afternoon, speaking to Commander Sarah Walsh. I identified myself as a concerned citizen who'd noticed unusual activity at the Hancock Wharf facility. What kind of activity? Walsh asked. Large vessels anchoring outside the shipping lanes, smaller boats making runs after midnight, containers being moved without customs documentation, I said. Do you have specific dates or vessel information? She asked. I gave her everything. Troy's schedule, the warehouse location, even the names of his criminal associates. I framed it as suspicious activity I'd observed during my harbor engineering work, never mentioning our family connection. We'll investigate, Walsh promised. If you see anything else unusual, call immediately. I hung up and poured myself 3 fingers of Jameson. Outside, sleet pelted the windows and the harbor looked gray and violent in the fading light. My phone buzzed. Darla. The kids want to see you, she said. Court order says supervised visits only, I replied. You want to see them? You go through the system. Nolan, please, she said. They don't understand what's happening. Maddie keeps asking why Mommy can't come home. I thought about Maddie's confusion, Felix's nightmares, the way both children flinched when I raised my voice. None of this was their fault, but they were paying the price anyway. Supervised visits, I repeated, through the system. You're destroying our family, she said. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped pretending it existed. 3 days later, the Coast Guard struck. I was reviewing foundation specs for the harbor project when my phone lit up with emergency alerts. Multiple law enforcement agencies were conducting operations at Hancock Wharf. Helicopter footage showed armed agents swarming the warehouse. Troy's pickup truck surrounded by federal marshals. The local news picked up the story within hours. Smuggling ring busted in Portland Harbor. Troy's mugshot appeared on screen, unshaven, wild-eyed, wearing the same leather jacket from our dinner. He'd been charged with racketeering, conspiracy, and attack on federal officers. Apparently, he'd tried to run when the Coast Guard boarded his boat, striking an agent with a boat hook before being tackled and cuffed. The judge denied bail. Flight risk, the prosecutor argued, ties to organized crime. That evening, Irene called, sobbing into the phone. They're saying terrible things about Troy. Money laundering, smuggling, it's impossible. He wouldn't hurt a fly, she said. He attacked a federal agent, Mom, I said. That's not the boy I raised, she cried. I almost laughed. No, it's exactly the boy you raised. You just never wanted to see it. How can you be so cold? He's your brother, she said. He stopped being my brother when he started screwing my wife, Irene gasped like I'd slapped her. Your language. My language? I snapped. Troy's facing 20 years in federal prison and you're worried about my language? I'm worried about my family falling apart, she said. It fell apart months ago, I replied. I'm just cleaning up the pieces. She hung up on me. I sat in my empty house, listening to the wind rattle the windows, thinking about family loyalty and the price of revenge. Tomorrow I'd visit Irene, deliver the eviction notice I'd been holding since Dad's end. The house had been transferred to me years ago. Dad's way of ensuring someone responsible handled his estate. But I'd never acted on it. Now seemed like the perfect time. The nursing home smelled like disinfectant and defeat. Irene sat in her wheelchair by the window, staring at the harbor through rain-streaked glass. She'd aged 10 years in the past month, her perfect hair now thin and gray, her once beautiful face collapsed with grief. "Nolan," she said without looking at me, "I suppose you're here to gloat." I set the manila envelope on her bedside table. "Eviction notice," I said. "You have 30 days." She opened it with shaking hands, eyes scanning the legal language, the signatures, the court seals. "This is Dad's house," she said. "Was Dad's house," I replied. "He transferred the deed to me in 2018. You've been living there rent-free for 7 years." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, voice breaking. I looked around the modest room. Single bed, small TV, photos of Troy and Darla on the nightstand. No pictures of me or my children. "That's not my problem anymore," I said. Irene started crying, deep sobs that shook her frail body. "I lost my son, my home, my family," she sobbed. "Are you happy now?" "No," I said honestly, "but I'm not unhappy either." I left her crying by the window and drove home through the autumn rain. The house felt huge and empty, every room echoing with memories of better times. Maddie's artwork still covered the refrigerator. Felix's toys remained scattered in the living room. I was sitting on the couch with a glass of whiskey when the front door exploded inward. Darla stood in the doorway, soaked to the skin, holding a tire iron like a medieval weapon. Her hair was wild, her makeup smeared, her court-ordered ankle monitor blinking red in the darkness. "You destroyed everything," she screamed. "Everything." I didn't move, just sipped my whiskey and studied her face, noting the desperation, the fear, the rage that came from losing control. "You're violating your restraining order," I said. "F the restraining order," she shouted. "You turned my children against me. You destroyed my reputation. You put Troy in prison." She stepped into the room, tire iron raised. I realized she actually intended to use it. The woman I'd married, who'd borne my children, who'd shared my bed for 9 years, was going to try to beat me to passing in my own living room. "Swing it," I said calmly. "Go ahead. Give me a reason to call the police." Darla hesitated, tire iron trembling in her grip. "You won't do it," I said, voice steady, "because deep down, you know this is all your fault. You cheated. You lied. You committed fraud. You destroyed our family for a quick screw with my brother." "He loves me," she shouted. "Troy doesn't love anyone," I said. "He used you to hurt me, and you were too stupid to see it." Darla screamed and swung the tire iron at my head. I ducked, caught her wrist mid-arc, twisted until the weapon clattered to the floor. She collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "Please," she whispered. "I'll do anything. Sign away my rights to the kids. Give you the house. Just don't let them send me to prison." I looked down at the broken woman who'd once been beautiful, who'd once made me believe in love and family and all the lies people tell themselves about forever. "Too late for that," I said. I called emergency, reported a break-in and attack. The police arrived within minutes, finding Darla cuffed to my radiator with zip ties I'd grabbed from my toolbox. "She's violating a restraining order," I told the responding officers. "Broke into my home with a weapon, attempted attack." They arrested her on the spot, reading her rights as they loaded her into the patrol car. Through the back window, I could see her screaming something, but the soundproof glass muffled her words. I watched the taillights disappear into the night, then went inside to pour another drink. Tomorrow, Sophia would file additional charges: burglary, attack with a weapon, violation of court orders. Darla was looking at serious prison time now, enough to ensure she'd never have custody of the children again. I'd won. So why did victory taste like ashes? The sentencing hearing took place on a bitter February morning, with snow falling like ash outside the courthouse windows. I sat in the gallery, watching Darla approach the bench in an orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair now lank and gray. Judge Cohen read the charges with mechanical precision. "Darla Marie Briggs, you have pleaded guilty to perjury in the first degree, child endangerment, credit fraud, burglary, and attack with a dangerous weapon. Do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Darla stood slowly, her lawyer's hand on her shoulder. "Your Honor, I know I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I'm still a mother. My children need me." "Your children," Judge Cohen replied, "are better off without you. 2 years in state prison, 5 years probation, and permanent loss of parental rights. You will have no contact with the minor children except through court-approved supervised visits, if they choose to see you." 2 years. Less than I'd hoped, more than she deserved. Troy's federal sentencing had been harsher, 5 years for racketeering, with additional charges pending in Massachusetts for his gambling debts. The Patriarcha family had disavowed him completely, leaving him to face both federal prison and the kind of enemies who didn't forgive unpaid debts. I'd received a letter from him the week before, smuggled through another inmate's girlfriend. It was brief and bitter. "Nolan, you destroyed me for vulva. Hope it was worth it. Don't expect me to forget." I'd burned the letter and never replied. Irene had died 3 weeks after her eviction, a massive stroke that left her unconscious for 2 days before the machines were turned off. I'd been named in her will as executor, a final, cruel joke that gave me power over the woman who'd never loved me. Her funeral was sparsely attended, a few neighbors, some church friends, Darla's sister who'd driven up from Boston. I stood at the back, holding Maddie's hand while Felix fidgeted beside me. "Why didn't Uncle Troy come?" Maddie asked. "Uncle Troy is sick," I lied. "He's in a hospital where they help people who make bad choices." "Will he get better?" she asked. I looked at the casket, thinking about family loyalty and the price of betrayal. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said. "Some people can't be fixed." The burial was brief. The pastor spoke about forgiveness and redemption, concepts that felt foreign in the February cold. I threw a handful of frozen dirt on the casket and walked away without looking back. Sophia found me in the courthouse lobby after Darla's sentencing, her expression unreadable. "So," she said, "you got everything you wanted. Full custody, the house, the business. Darla and Troy are both in prison. Irene's dead. Congratulations." There was something in her voice I couldn't identify. Disappointment, maybe, or pity. "You sound like you disapprove," I said. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at her face, looking for signs of deception, but Sophia had never been a liar. "How long have you known?" I asked. 2 months, she said. "It's yours in case you're wondering." That night after the custody hearing, when we celebrated at the Eastland, I remembered that night. Too much wine, too much adrenaline, the reckless coupling that followed victory. We'd been careful about keeping our professional relationships separate from personal feelings, but success had made us stupid. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Sophia laughed, a sound without humor. "I'm 36 years old, Nolan. This might be my only chance. I'm keeping it." "And us?" I asked. "There is no us," she said. "There's you, there's me, and there's a child who deserves better than two people who don't know how to love without destroying." She was right, of course. I'd spent 9 months systematically destroying everyone who'd betrayed me, but I'd lost something essential in the process. The capacity for trust, maybe, or simple human connection. "The baby will be provided for," I said. "Financially, I mean. Whatever it needs." "I know," Sophia said. "You're good at providing things. It's the emotional part you struggle with." Sophia left me standing in the courthouse lobby, surrounded by the detritus of broken families and shattered lives. I drove home through the snow, past the harbor where ice was forming around the docks I'd helped engineer. The house felt enormous and empty. Maddie was at school, Felix at daycare, and I had the afternoon to myself. I walked through rooms that echoed with memory. Darla's laughter in the kitchen, Troy's voice from the living room, family dinners when we'd all pretended to be happy. I poured a glass of Jameson and stood at the living room window, watching the harbor freeze. Everything I'd fought for was mine now. The business was thriving, the harbor project nearly complete, my reputation intact. I had full custody of the children, complete control of my life, and enough money to ensure comfort for years to come. So why did I feel like I'd lost everything that mattered? My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Your brother says hello from federal prison. He's made some interesting friends." I stared at the message, understanding its implications. Troy had found new allies behind bars, people with connections on the outside. The Patriarcha family might have disavowed him, but there were other organizations that valued loyalty and remembered debts. I deleted the text and poured another drink. Let them come. I'd survived betrayal by my wife and brother. I could survive whatever followed. The children came home that evening, filling the house with noise and life. Maddie showed me her math homework, while Felix built elaborate structures with blocks, both of them chattering about their day. "Daddy," Maddie said during dinner, "Tommy Mitchell's mom asked if we were okay. She said his dad heard you were in trouble." Small towns. Gossip traveled faster than snow in a Maine winter. "We're fine, sweetheart," I replied. "People like to talk about things they don't understand." Are Mommy and Uncle Troy ever coming home? She asked. I looked at my daughter. Darla's eyes, my stubborn chin, innocent in ways I'd forgotten how to be. No, I said. They're not coming home. Felix started crying then, the way children do when they finally understand that some things can't be fixed. I held him until the tears stopped, feeling his small body shake against my chest. Later, after the children were asleep, I walked out to the bluff behind the house. The harbor stretched before me, black water and white ice, lobster boats sleeping at their moorings like prehistoric birds. A figure approached from the darkness, Joe Martineau, who'd worked the harbor for 40 years and knew every boat, every fisherman, every secret the water held. Heard about your troubles, Joe said, lighting a cigarette with hands weathered like driftwood. Hell of a thing. Yeah, I said, the word tasting like salt and fatigue. Joe took a drag, exhaled smoke into the cold evening air. Your dad would be proud, you know, he said. Standing up for yourself like that. Taking care of your kids. I thought about my father, dead 5 years now, wondering what he'd really think about the choices I'd made. Would he approve of the systematic destruction of his youngest son? The calculated cruelty toward his wife? Was it worth it? Joe asked, reading my silence. I looked out at the harbor, at the docks and piers I'd helped design, the concrete foundations that would outlast us all. Everything built to last, engineered to withstand storms and time and the slow corruption of salt water. No, I said finally, but you should hear how quiet the nights are now. Joe nodded and walked away, leaving me alone on the bluff. I stood there until the cold drove me inside, listening to the silence that had replaced everything I'd once called family. In the kitchen, I found a letter that had arrived that afternoon. Heavy paper, expensive stationery, addressed in careful handwriting. I opened it with steady hands. Mr. Briggs, I represent certain interests that your brother has wronged. We understand you may have information regarding his assets and associates. We would appreciate a conversation at your earliest convenience. Vincent Torino, Frank's brother, according to Webb's files. A man who collected debts with interest and never forgot an obligation. I folded the letter carefully and set it beside my empty glass. Tomorrow I'd call Sophia, discuss security measures and custody arrangements for the baby she carried. I'd review my will, update my insurance, and make provisions for the children's future. Because this wasn't over. It would never be over. Troy was in federal prison, but his shadow still reached into my life. Darla would serve her time and eventually be released, carrying whatever poison she'd cultivated during her incarceration. The Torino family expected payment for debts I'd never incurred, revenge for crimes I'd never committed. I'd won every battle, but the war would continue until one of us was dead. I poured another drink and walked back to the window, watching ice form on the harbor. Somewhere in the darkness, my enemies were planning their next move. Let them come. I'd built my life on solid foundations, engineered to last. Everything else was just concrete lies, and I'd always been good at telling those. The baby would be born in September, Sophia's child carrying my DNA but none of my sins. Maybe that was enough. Maybe one person could escape the poisoned legacy of the Briggs family and build something clean. I finished my drink and went upstairs to check on Maddie and Felix. They slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing around them. Maddie clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one Darla had bought for her 3rd birthday. Felix had kicked off his covers again, sprawled across the bed like a starfish. I tucked them in and returned to my study, where Vincent Torino's letter waited on my desk. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, the kind of stationery that announced serious intent. My phone rang. Unknown number, Boston area code. Mr. Briggs? The voice asked, cultured, patient. Vincent Torino. I believe you received my correspondence. I did, I said. Excellent, Torino replied. I wonder if we might arrange a meeting. Nothing dramatic, just a conversation between businessmen. I looked out the window at the frozen harbor, calculating angles and probabilities like a structural equation. What kind of conversation? I asked. Your brother accumulated significant debts before his incarceration, he said. Debts that don't disappear simply because he's wearing federal orange. We understand you've been quite thorough in dismantling his affairs. I don't know anything about his gambling debts, I replied. Torino chuckled, a sound like breaking glass. Mr. Briggs, we know you orchestrated his arrest. Quite brilliant, actually. Using the Coast Guard to clean up your family problems. We respect efficiency. The admission hung between us, dangerous, irreversible. I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. What do you want? I asked. Troy borrowed $57,000. With interest and penalties, the current balance is $83,000, Torino said. Since you've assumed control of his assets, we thought you might wish to discuss repayment. I'm not responsible for my brother's debts, I said. Of course not. Legally speaking, you have no obligation whatsoever, he said smoothly. But family is family, Mr. Briggs. And reputation matters in business. The threat was subtle, unmistakable. I need time to consider this, I said. Naturally. We're not unreasonable people. Shall we say 1 week? I'll call again Friday evening. The line went dead. I sat in my study, staring at the letter. My war with Troy had opened fronts I'd never anticipated. The Torino family didn't care about justice or revenge. They cared about money and precedent. Allowing one debtor's brother to escape obligation would encourage others to try the same. I was trapped by my own success. The next morning brought more complications. Sophia called at 7 a.m., her voice tight with controlled panic. We have a problem, she said. Wes Harrow filed an appeal last night claiming prosecutorial misconduct and judicial bias. He's also requesting a federal investigation into your business practices. I dressed quickly and drove to her office. She looked pale and exhausted behind her desk. Pregnancy suited her, but stress was taking its toll. What's his basis for the appeal? I asked. He claims you fabricated evidence, that the surveillance footage was doctored, that you planted the construction materials at Troy's warehouse, she said, sliding papers across the desk. It's all BS, but it's detailed nonsense. Someone fed him information. I scanned the documents. The accusations were disturbingly precise. Surveillance data, payment logs, communication summaries, too much detail to be coincidence. Someone's been talking, I said. More than talking. Look at page 12, Sophia said. I flipped to the section she indicated. My heart sank. Wes had documentation of my communications with Webb, records of financial transfers, and even transcripts of my conversations with Coast Guard Commander Walsh. How did he get this? I asked. That's what I'd like to know, Sophia said. Your phone records, email logs, banking information. Someone with serious resources has been digging into your life. I thought of Vincent Torino's voice, his awareness of my involvement. The Torino family, I said. They're trying to create leverage. Or Wes is working with them directly, she added. He's done it before, represented mob wives, laundered money through legal fees. This appeal is just the opening move. My phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Nice office building, pretty lawyer, would hate to see anything happen to either. I handed the phone to Sophia. Her face went white. They're threatening me? She asked. They're threatening everyone I care about, I said, moving to the window and scanning the street. We need to accelerate our timeline. What timeline? She asked. I turned to her, a decision crystallizing like ice on the harbor. The endgame, I said. If they want to play with federal charges and mob connections, I'll give them something to really worry about. That afternoon, I called Marcus Webb and arranged a meeting at his office. He looked tired, older than his 58 years, but his eyes remained sharp. Torino family's making moves, he said without preamble. My contacts in Boston say they're serious about collecting Troy's debt. Not the kind of people who accept bankruptcy as an excuse. What do you know about their operations? I asked. Enough to stay away from them, Webb said. Vincent runs the legit front, restaurants, construction, waste management. His cousin Frank handles the dirty work. Loan sharking, protection, occasional disappearance. He pulled out a thick file, spreading photos and documents across the desk. But here's the interesting part, he said. They're not untouchable. The FBI has been working a RICO case for 3 years. They need one more major conviction to bring it down. I studied the surveillance photos. Vincent in sharp suits, Frank with his dead stare, their network sprawling across New England. What kind of conviction? I asked. Someone willing to testify about their loan sharking, Webb said. Specific dates, amounts, threats. Testimony from someone close enough to have proof. Like Troy, I said. Or someone Troy trusted, Webb replied, watching me closely. The FBI would be very interested in talking to you, Nolan, especially if you had recordings. I thought of Vincent's call, his careful phrasing, his implicit threats. I might be able to arrange that, I said. Webb smiled for the first time in weeks. Now you're thinking like a winner instead of a sufferer. I spent the next 3 days preparing. A new phone with recording capability. Backup devices. Meticulous notes of every interaction. I moved Maddie and Felix to Sophia's apartment, telling them their school was being fumigated. Friday evening. A blizzard turned Portland into a white maze. I sat in my study, whiskey untouched, waiting. The phone rang at exactly 8 p.m. "Mr. Briggs," Torino said smoothly, "I trust you've had time to consider our discussion." "I have," I replied, activating the recorder, "but I have questions about the original loan terms." "Of course," he said. "What would you like to know?" For the next 20 minutes, I guided Vincent through a detailed confession. Interest rates that violated federal law, threats made against Troy's family, connections to smuggling, loan sharking, and money laundering. Vincent was proud of his organization's efficiency, happy to explain their methods to someone he considered a potential client. "So we're agreed," Vincent concluded. 83,000 delivered to our Portland representative by next Friday. "And if I refuse?" I asked. "Well, Mr. Briggs," he said, voice velvet wrapped in menace, "you have a lovely family. Children are so vulnerable, aren't they? And that pregnant lawyer friend of yours, pregnancy can be such a dangerous time." "Perfect. Extortion, threats against minors, conspiracy to commit violence. The FBI would have everything they needed." "I'll have the money," I lied. "Excellent," Vincent said. "Franco will contact you with delivery instructions." I hung up and immediately called the Portland FBI field office. "Agent Sarah Chen, please," I said. "It's urgent." RICO task force business. Within the hour, Agent Chen sat across from me in my living room, listening to the recording through headphones. Her face remained calm, but her eyes lit with quiet satisfaction. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "Vincent's been careful for years, never saying anything incriminating on the record. You've just handed us the keystone for our entire case." "What happens now?" I asked. "We set up the money drop," she explained. "We'll arrest Franco and anyone else who shows up. Then we use their testimony, combined with this recording, to take down Vincent and the whole Torino organization. You'll need me to testify." "Yes," Chen confirmed. "But we can offer full witness protection if necessary." "I have children," I said. "We'll protect them too," she assured me. "Once this moves forward, the Torinos won't be in a position to threaten anyone." She left me with contact numbers, procedural outlines, and legal reassurances. But no amount of paper could dull the edge of dread. The FBI's operation might take months, maybe years. Until then, Vincent's threats would hang over me like smoke before a fire, every knock at the door a potential reckoning. I called Sophia and explained everything. She listened in silence, then asked the question I'd been dreading. "Was it worth it, Nolan?" she said quietly. "Destroying Troy and Darla? Look where it's led us." I pictured Darla in her prison jumpsuit, Troy in federal lockup, Irene dead and buried, the ruins of a family I'd dismantled piece by piece. "I don't know," I said, "but it's too late to change course now." "It's never too late," she replied. "You could pay Vincent's debt, walk away, start over somewhere else." "With what? My conscience? My self-respect?" I laughed bitterly. "I lost those months ago." "Then what's left?" she asked. I looked around the house, empty, cold, echoing with the ghosts of intentions that once felt noble. "Winning," I said. "That's all that's left." The money drop was scheduled for the following Friday, at Pier 7 on the eastern waterfront. I would bring a briefcase containing 83,000 in marked bills, hand it to Franco, walk away and let the FBI swoop in. Simple, clean, final. But Vincent Torino hadn't survived decades in organized crime by being predictable. The call came Thursday night, just as I was putting the children to bed. "Change of plans," Franco said, voice rough and clipped. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., the old fish packing plant on Commercial Street. Come alone, bring the money, don't get cute." He hung up before I could respond. I immediately called Agent Chen. She answered on the first ring. "They're moving the drop," I said. "New location, Commercial Street, fish packing plant, 3 p.m. tomorrow." There was a pause on her end, then, "It's a trap. They figured out something's wrong. They probably want you somewhere isolated before they decide what to do next." "So we terminate?" "We adapt," Chen said, voice sharp with urgency. "More surveillance, tactical backups. We'll have eyes on every alley and rooftop." "But Nolan?" Her tone darkened. "If this goes wrong, if they suspect you're working with us, they won't hesitate. They won't hesitate to eliminate the threat." I spent that night writing letters to Maddie and Felix, explaining choices they wouldn't understand for years. I also drafted a will, leaving everything to Sophia and the unborn child, ensuring my destruction wouldn't extend to the next generation. Friday afternoon arrived gray and cold, with ice forming on the harbor, despite the calendar saying spring was only weeks away. I drove to Commercial Street carrying a briefcase full of FBI money and wearing a wire that felt like a capital punishment. The fish packing plant had been abandoned for years, its windows broken and roof sagging under accumulated snow. I parked outside and walked to the entrance, noting the silence that seemed too complete for afternoon in downtown Portland. Franco waited inside, flanked by two men I didn't recognize. All three wore expensive coats and the kind of confidence that came from never facing consequences. Mr. Briggs. Franco was smaller than I'd expected, with dead eyes and hands that had clearly seen violence. You bring our money? I set the briefcase on a rusted conveyor belt. 83,000 as agreed. Franco opened the case, counted bills with practiced efficiency. Very good. Vincent appreciates prompt payment. He gestured to his associates, who began moving toward the exits. The meeting was over, the debt satisfied, the threat neutralized. Too easy. One more thing, Franco said, turning back with a tool in his hand. Vincent wanted me to deliver a message about family loyalty. The FBI wire wouldn't save me now. Neither would the surveillance team positioned outside. By the time they realized something was wrong, Franco would have put 3 bullets in my chest and disappeared into Portland's maze of waterfront alleys. I thought about Sophia, about the baby, about Maddie and Felix growing up without either parent, about the price of revenge and the cost of winning. Any last words? Franco asked. Yeah, I said. You're under arrest. The FBI agents burst through every entrance simultaneously, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands that echoed off the building's metal walls. Franco spun toward the main door, tool raised, and Agent Chen put 2 rounds center mass before he could fire. The other 2 men surrendered immediately, hands raised, faces pale with shock. Within minutes, the abandoned plant was swarming with federal agents and crime scene technicians, radios crackling, boots echoing on concrete, evidence bags multiplying across the floor like ghosts of crimes past. Nice work, Agent Chen said, helping me remove the wire hidden under my shirt. Franco's been wanted for 3 homicides in Massachusetts. You just saved the taxpayers a lengthy trial. I stared at Franco's body, still expressionless, blood pooling beneath the folds of his expensive coat. Vincent will know I cooperated, I said quietly. Vincent will be in federal custody within the hour, Chen replied. We've been tracking his movements all week, waiting for Franco to confirm the extortion. This was the last piece we needed. The arrests made national news. Major organized crime figure eliminated in FBI sting. Vincent Torino taken into custody along with 12 associates, charged with racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit homicide. The loan sharking operation dismantled, the family's New England network destroyed. I testified 6 months later, telling a federal grand jury about Troy's debts, Vincent's threats, and Franco's attempt to homicide me despite payment of the money owed. The case was airtight, recordings, witnesses, physical evidence that painted a picture of systematic criminal enterprise. Vincent received life without parole. His surviving associates got 20 to 30 years each. The Torino family's reign was over. But victory felt hollow standing in the courthouse lobby afterward, surrounded by FBI agents and federal prosecutors celebrating another successful prosecution. I'd survived, my children were safe, my business was secure. I'd also destroyed everyone who'd ever mattered to me. Sophia gave birth in September, a daughter she named Claire, with dark hair and my stubborn chin. I held her in the hospital, feeling something crack inside my chest as she gripped my finger with tiny hands. She's beautiful, I whispered. She's ours, Sophia corrected. Not yours, not mine. Ours. I looked at this woman who'd stood beside me through months of legal warfare, who'd carried my child while dodging mob threats and federal investigations, who'd never asked for anything except honesty. I don't know how to be a father without being a destroyer, I said. Then learn, Sophia replied. Her voice was soft but firm. For her, I visit Darla sometimes in the women's correctional facility in Wyndham. She's aged badly. Prison food and stress have added 20 pounds in 10 years to her appearance. Her roots are showing, her skin's sallow. She still wears the entitled sharpness of a woman who believes the world did her wrong. She asks about the children but never apologizes for the choices that led us here. During my last visit, she looked at me across the scratched plastic table, eyes dull but still searching. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Which part? I said. All of it, she replied. The investigation, the arrests, the trials, destroying our family for revenge. I thought about Claire's first smile, about Maddie's improving grades, about Felix's nightmares finally ending, about the silence in my house that used to feel like death, but now felt like peace. No, I said. I regret trusting you in the first place. Darla started crying then, the way she always did when reality penetrated her self-pity. I left her there and drove home through autumn light that turned the harbor gold. Troy was released last month, 5 years reduced to 3 for good behavior and cooperation with federal investigators. I heard he's living in Florida now, working construction under an assumed name, staying away from gambling and organized crime. He sent a postcard with no return address. I learned my lesson. Hope you learned yours. Maybe we both did. I'm engaged to Sophia now, planning a small ceremony next spring. Maddie will be my best man, her choice, and one that makes sense in our broken and rebuilt family. Felix calls Sophia Mom sometimes, which breaks my heart and heals it simultaneously. Claire is walking now, taking tentative steps between furniture pieces with the determination of someone who refuses to fall. She has Sophia's intelligence and my engineering mind, already building elaborate structures with blocks and demanding explanations for how things work. She'll grow up knowing the truth about her family's history, but also knowing that people can choose to be better than their worst moments. That love doesn't require destruction, that trust can be rebuilt, that some foundations are worth preserving. Yesterday, I found Maddie in the garage, hunched over the blueprints for my latest harbor project. The fluorescent light buzzed above her, casting shadows over the schematics. She traced the structural elements with her finger, brow furrowed in concentration. "What's this part?" she asked, pointing to the reinforced slab. "That's where the load transfers into the piling caps," I said. "It holds the whole platform steady." She nodded thoughtfully, then looked up at me with eyes too old for her age. Darla's shape, but mine in everything else. "Will you teach me?" she asked. "To be an engineer?" I said, a little surprised. "To build things that last." I looked at my daughter, Darla's beauty, my stubbornness, but something entirely her own in her eyes, something hopeful and undamaged by the wars her parents had fought. "Yeah," I said, "I'll teach you." We spent the afternoon reviewing foundation specifications, talking about the mathematics of permanence and the engineering principles that keep structures stable in storms. Technical discussions that felt like the most important conversations of my life. Because maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not the dramatic gesture or the moment of revelation, but the daily choice to build instead of destroy, to teach instead of punish, to love instead of win. The harbor project was completed last month, ahead of schedule and under budget. The new pier can withstand 100-year storms and accommodate vessels twice the size of anything currently using the harbor. It's built to last generations, a foundation for Portland's maritime future. Sometimes I stand on the pier at sunset, watching lobster boats return from their daily runs, and think about the cost of revenge. Darla in prison, Troy in exile, Irene dead, a dozen lives destroyed in the pursuit of justice that turned into something darker. But then Claire laughs from her stroller, or Maddie points out a design flaw in my blueprints, or Sophia takes my hand and reminds me that some things are worth preserving, that not every problem requires demolition, that sometimes the strongest foundations are built on forgiveness instead of concrete lies. The sun sets over Casco Bay, painting the harbor gold and crimson, and I understand finally that winning and happiness are different things. That revenge and justice aren't synonymous, that a man can destroy his enemies and still lose everything that matters. But understanding comes too late to change the past. All I can do is build better things in the future, teach my children to choose love over vengeance, and hope that Claire grows up in a world where family loyalty doesn't require the systematic destruction of everyone who betrays it. The harbor is quiet now, peaceful in ways it never was during the years of surveillance and investigation and legal warfare. The water laps against the concrete pilings I designed, steady and eternal, carrying away the debris of storms and seasons. Maybe that's enough. Maybe peace is its own kind of victory, even when it comes at the price of everything you thought you wanted. I pick up Claire, point toward the horizon where the last fishing boats are heading home, and promise her a future built on steadier ground than the one I inherited. Some lies are made of concrete, others are made of hope. I'm finally learning the difference.